We will move now into the program and to our keynote of the day. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Michael Nelson. He advises governments, companies, and other organizations in internet technology to improve the performance and the security of more than 9 million websites that he had revamped through their own organizations. He has worked in IBM, Bloomberg, and served in the White House as well. All of these knowledges, we're hoping that today we will be learning a lot through the presentation that we will be seeing. He will be giving us a keynote on internet and the strategy of tomorrow's internet. Please help me welcome to the stage Dr. Nelson. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I want to thank in particular the Internet Society, a group I've been involved with for 20 years, mostly in Washington, D.C. As was mentioned, I've been working on the internet for a long time. And in that time, we've seen phenomenal changes, but they're nothing compared to what we'll see in the next 10 years. And so my job today in the next 25 minutes is to describe how Bahrain and the countries in this region can take better advantage of this technology, and to give you some very clear bumper stickers, clear, simple ideas that can shape the strategy for the future. This is the most important slide of the entire deck. If you want more information, there's my email address, and more importantly, there's my Twitter handle. At last count, there's 50,000 Mike Nelsons in America. You'll need this email address to find the right one. So, as was mentioned, I've had a number of different jobs at places like Microsoft, IBM. Also important is something that's not on here, which is that my PhD is from MIT. I went from there to Washington, D.C., and I became Al Gore's science advisor when he was a senator, and then worked in the White House. And so I've had a deep understanding of how government can either help or hurt the development of technology. Little background on Cloudflare. We have a very simple bumper sticker. We're building a better internet. And we're doing that by deploying data centers all around the world. This slide is out of date because 3 days ago we had a 154th data center in Ulaanbaatar. And we're working very hard to install a data center here in Bahrain. These data centers process about 10% of all the world's web traffic. Anytime you go to a website, there's a 10% chance that you're going to a Cloudflare data center. We do that because those data centers can filter out the bad traffic that nobody wants to have hit their website. The traffic from botnets, the traffic from malware sites. So it's part of a giant filter that makes the internet more secure. In the next few months, we're going to keep building. We'll get up to 200 data centers, and very soon, almost every person will have a data center in their country. So, one of the things you noticed on my short resume was that I was a professor at Georgetown. I did that for 3 years after working at IBM. This is what professors do. They provide a framework that their students can use to understand a topic. They tell stories, they assign readings, they start a discussion, and they require term papers and grade students. I'm going to do the first 4 of those, so you don't have to take notes. I will make these slides available. At Georgetown, I taught classes on how the internet's growing, how to innovate, and perhaps most relevant for this topic, my most popular class on how to predict the futures. Because we don't know exactly what's coming. We have to be ready for different versions of the future. One thing I learned in Washington, particularly on Capitol Hill and at the White House, is that you always have to have a good bumper sticker. You have to have 7 or 8 words that summarize your key idea. Because that way, the people who listen to you will remember, and most importantly, they might quote you and reuse that bumper sticker if it's powerful enough, short enough, and effective enough. You also need a good buzzword. You only get 3 or 4 syllables for that. You need 2 good factoids, statistics that can convince people that you're right. It's better if they're true. You also need a good story and a good diagram. And for extra credit, having a good historical analogy is useful. So I'm going to use all of these in my talk today, and I hope you'll be able to recycle and reuse some of them in the future. So I'll give you the bumper stickers, I'll give you the factoids, I'll show you how cloud technology is changing the internet, and most importantly, I'll talk about how Bahrain and your organizations can harness these cloud technologies. First off, though, if you want to know more about bumper stickers, there's an incredible book called Microstyle, The Art of Writing Little. It's only 80 pages long, it's written by a linguist, and it will help you become the best writer of tweets in Bahrain. 2 other books are useful too, but read Microstyle. All of my students are required to read that. So I'll talk about the flood of data that's coming. I'll talk about the technologies and how it's different. I'll talk about how we can design the cloud and the cloud of things to do the most good for the most people and spur the most innovation. This is a book that came out about 5 years ago. It was really the first bestseller about big data. It's by 2 of my friends. Despite it's not just that they were my friends, this is still one of the best books on what's happening with big data and how we're going to control it. There was also a report, 2 reports, that came out of the Obama White House in 2014. And this was really the first attempt to look at the policy implications of big data, and they got it right. They explored what was going to be possible, what governments needed to do to spur the growth of the cloud and uses of big data. And I'd recommend both of these books as background. This is the first reason everything is changing. This is the supply of data. On the left, 2010, we had about 2 trillion bytes of data moving around the internet every day. That number is going up by a factor of 20 in 10 years. These are the numbers you need to memorize. We're on the way to zettabytes per year, and in our lifetime, we'll be handling yottabytes of data, all the images. The best documentation on these trends is from Cisco. They have something called the Cisco Visual Index. They're just publishing the next annual version, and it shows just how fast the amount of data is growing. So we're already above 1 zettabyte. That will triple in 5 years, 24% growth per year. We're seeing that PCs only account for about 46% of all the traffic on the internet, even today. And that wireless is a growing part of this flood of information. The other factoid worth remembering is right there towards the bottom, that internet traffic will reach about 30 gigabytes per capita by 2021. So that's a lot of movies, it's a lot of databases. This is coming from not just the ordinary places, YouTube videos and Facebook, but it's coming from sensors embedded in our infrastructure, it's coming from drones, it's coming from places that you might not think it's coming from. Your thermostat, your television. How many people in the room have more than 3 devices in their home that connect to the internet? How many have more than 5? How many have more than 10? Okay, we still have some hands up. How many have more than 20? How many have more than 7 kids? The point is that in 3 years, if I give this talk, every one of you will still have your hand up when I ask if you have 20 devices in your home. You might have hundreds of devices in your home if you have sensors in your lawn for the sprinklers, if you have thermostats in your attic. I mean, the technology is getting so cheap and so easy that we really are going to have almost everything connected. If you have a consumer item that costs more than $25, it'll probably have some way to at least chirp to the internet. So when you lose your glasses or your car keys, you'll find them. The other reason we're seeing this explosion in data is because we have all these new tools. Clearly the cloud, but also the Internet of Things. And we have what I call the cloud of things. And this is a very simple slide. All you technologists will look at this and go, why he's just showing us what the cloud is. But this is a very important slide because it shows how, with the cloud, we can have several different models. Obviously, our computers are talking to this cloud where all the data and the applications live. Our cameras are talking, our smartphones are talking, our light bulbs are starting to talk to the cloud. Our dogs can now talk to the cloud. There are dog collars that have GPS and an internet connection. But the important thing is that we can design this cloud of things in a couple different ways. I was very excited to hear that here in Bahrain, the government has a very simple bumper sticker, very simple buzzword, cloud first. But that can mean a couple different things. In this diagram, I think we have the right approach. These devices are talking to different cloud services provided by different cloud companies. So that's why we have the multiple bubbles. The other important thing is that they're interconnected so the different cloud services can be used together in a cloud of clouds. And that's what I am told the buzzword cloud first means here in Bahrain. It means that you're building a multi-cloud environment, you're not going to rely on one company, and you're going to work to make sure that the technologies work together. Cloudflare's future is based on making that happen. If you're interested in learning more about the multi-cloud environment, talk to me or talk to some of our people. This is fundamental. We don't want a clouds-first strategy, where you do one thing in one cloud, and then you have to use another cloud for something else, and another cloud, and they don't talk to each other. You can't move your data. You can't combine the features. We want an open cloud, and I wrote an article in Science Magazine about this 10 years ago, because this is the fundamental choice we have to make. So first recommendation, cloud first, cloud of clouds first. So don't put all your emphasis on one solution. You have to take the best of the, and that's what the internet does. The internet is a network of networks. So the second reason, the third technology obviously is broadband wireless, and you're moving very aggressively in that area. Another one that most people don't see or understand is that we have a lot of open source tools, a lot of analytic tools that companies throughout the ecosystem can use. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars for tools to understand all this data. Machine learning, and a lot of data sets. Data sets that are often made available for free by governments. And again, I'm very excited to see open government, open data initiatives here in the Gulf, many of which are going to be vital for startups who are going to develop the next tools, the next ecosystem, the next big data applications. When you add all this together, you get something I call Cloud Plus. The Chinese have a term that's very similar, but we have to think of all these things together. When I got started on the internet back in the late 80s, early 90s, the web was just being born. That was the big technology. It did transform everything, but now we have this combination of 6 or 7 technologies that's 10 or 20 times more powerful if we can make it all work together. The other reason that we're seeing so much excitement about big data and so much excitement about this new internet we're building and the cloud of things is because there's more demand for it. You might wonder what this is doing up here. This is a list of the most popular movies in 2015. If you go down that list, there's about 5 of the 10 movies that involve superheroes, people with superhuman powers. That's what people want. That's what people are demanding now. They want the superhuman powers that these technologies can give them. Examples? Batman. Any Batman fans? Okay. Well, they've got the Batcave. The Batcave is all about situational awareness, collecting data from everywhere and, importantly, combining it in a way that Batman and Robin can figure out where the criminals are and what they need to do. Who doesn't want that? You want to, whether it's a matter of avoiding the traffic jam, knowing when the bad weather is coming, knowing where your kids are or your friends are, or more seriously, knowing where criminals are and where security threats are. We need this situational awareness, and we're demanding it. And that's what our challenge as IT companies is. Another example, in a lot of these movies, it's not one superhero, it's a team of superheroes. And again, this is what we need to deliver as IT companies, ways for people to collaborate with each other and with data. And so we're using our smartphones to do online collaboration. We're using the data to understand how these teams can work together and tackle new problems. So that's what we really want. Obviously, we want communication. We want content. Those have been the drivers of the internet. But we're also seeing demand for collaboration. And the last two, I think, are the most exciting new pieces of the puzzle. A demand for community and commitment. People want to go online so that they can work with people as a committed team to solve community problems. That's new and that's different, and it's going to be a very big driver in the coming years. We're already seeing these open source communities that develop incredibly powerful tools, people in 17 different countries building collaborative teams that work together as well, if not better, than they would if they were in the same room. These changes are going to fundamentally affect our economy. These are some of the examples of how it's happening. The Startup of You is a book I recommend to my students who are thinking of becoming entrepreneurs, and it talks about how to use these tools to build a company using your connections and your talent. The second one, the sharing economy, is sort of passé now. That was the 2015 word of the year, but it's all the more real because now we have companies that are worth $50 billion or more that started out by sharing resources in new and more efficient ways that were only possible because of situational awareness, tracking of cars, tracking of customers, and the ability for people to make choices. And then the base of the pyramid. And again, this is something we don't hear enough about. The poorest billion, the poorest 2 billion people in the world are going to be the people who benefit the most from the technologies we're talking about here. And we can talk about that in our panel discussion later. So the economics of the cloud, it's making everything easier. It's giving us better access to data, better access to tools. The third point is probably the most important. It's giving us new ways to find the talent we need no matter where that person is, and to develop the talent of both younger people and older people who need new skills as they develop ways to use the tools we're talking about. We're seeing reduction in the barriers to international trade as things go online. It's much easier to move a piece of software than it is to move a truck or a bag of potatoes. And the last item is also important. These technologies are going to make it a lot harder for governments to pick winners and losers and to try to favor one company over another, because the competition in this global market is going to be so much easier when everybody has access to these tools. This is really a story about small and medium-sized businesses getting the technology that in the past was only available to IBM and United Airlines and the largest companies. Our company is a case study in this kind of innovation. And that's the reason I accepted this opportunity to speak today, is I wanted to spend 2 minutes sharing our company's success. The company is 8 years old. We just celebrated our 8th birthday last week, and we made some major new announcements, some really radical announcements as part of our birthday celebration. I've been with the company for 4 years, And in that time, we've grown from 135 people to about 900 people. We have 3 major locations, London, San Francisco, and Singapore. And we, as I mentioned, we have data centers all around the world, and we protect about 10 million websites. But what's cool and what's important are these last 3 items. Cloudflare would not exist if it were not for the cloud. Or if it did, we would have to have about 2,500 employees to do all that we do. Because we're able to use the cloud to do much of the processing that used to have to be done in boxes that we would have to buy and maintain. We can now put things in the cloud, and also we can outsource a whole bunch of the tasks that companies used to do in-house and let somebody else, usually a cloud service company, do it for us. So whether it's managing our recruiting, managing our customer data, managing our pension data, we just let somebody else do all the things that we don't do that well. We just focus on what we do best, which is design a really fast, very cost-effective, very secure network. That's allowed us to do something that none of our competitors do. We have a freemium business model. More than 90% of our 10 million customers don't pay us anything. And we don't take any personal data from them either. We just provide a better internet. And by protecting them, we can protect everyone, including our paying customers. Again, lots of changes going on. If you want some recommended reading, I really recommend Brian Arthur. He's sort of a revolutionary economist, and he's challenged a lot of the basic assumptions of economics, and he talks about the second economy, one that's based not just on profit and loss, but also on the satisfaction that people get from working together and sharing data and sharing ideas. The cloud is enabling these new approaches. Often, you'll have the same company using 2 or 3 different business models because they can. They have the flexibility to try new things. Because with the cloud, you can get up and running in a few weeks rather than taking 6 months or a year to install a bunch of hardware, hire a bunch of people, make sure it all works. With the cloud, you can innovate, 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 and test and innovate some more. One of the classes I teach at Georgetown is on creating a culture of innovation, and these are some of the bumper stickers about innovation. To foster innovation in a place like Bahrain, you obviously need technology. Part of that is getting spaces for innovation. GitHub is like the classic example of an online space for innovation where people share their software, get ideas, improve the software, share it again. In the physical space, you need the equivalent. Cloudflare set up an office in Washington. We didn't buy office space or rent office space in a regular office building. We went to WeWork, which is one of many different co-working spaces, where we could share common facilities, the coffee bar, the Xerox machine, the conference rooms, with literally 100 different companies. And we got a lot from talking to those companies and learning from them. When it comes to culture, you have to be ready to partner. And again, this requires a different approach, a different culture. You have to be open to sharing ideas that in the past you might have kept to yourself because you thought that was a competitive advantage. Today, the competitive advantage is to share as much as possible. Every time we post something on the Cloudflare blog, 500,000 geeks around the world read what we do. And they provide us a lot of feedback because often we're describing our new projects, the new ideas that we want to try and experiment with, and they volunteer to help us do it. And then the last point is the one that I've spent 30 years working on, and that is policy. And so I'll spend a few slides on policy. You need to have effective ways to foster the growth of your infrastructure. You have to have effective ways to protect the content and foster the sharing of content at the same time. The problem is there's a lot of really bad ideas going around right now. My entire career can be summarized in a 3-word bumper sticker, SSS, stopping stupid stuff. And right now there are more stupid ideas on what to do about the internet and about the cloud and about big data and about artificial intelligence than ever before. It's really important that the technologists in particular get engaged with the policymakers, talk to the reporters, get involved with civil society, and really help point to a better future that doesn't lead to artificial restrictions on what the future can be. So we need to have an understanding that the internet and the cloud are based on open interconnection, making sure all the networks and the cloud services can connect together. We need to focus on the fact that this is technology that's born global. We don't want to have a Bahraini cloud that doesn't interact with a Kuwaiti cloud that doesn't interact with the UAE cloud. And we need to have minimal regulation. I've gotten in trouble a few times for saying this, but I'll do it again. In Europe, the reaction to the technology is to regulate until someone proves to you that you don't need to. Traditionally in the US, the approach has been to not regulate until somebody proves there's a reason to do so. And I think we can agree that the US model of innovation has worked better for the last 30 years. The other thing governments can do is provide a clear and effective vision of a future that will be better for everyone. When I worked in the White House in the early 90s, we did 3 reports that really provided a vision of what the future could be for the internet in the US, the internet globally, and for e-commerce. And these really helped mobilize opinion. It publicized the opportunity, and it really motivated the agencies of the US government to help us get there. I can't emphasize how a clear vision of a future can help mobilize both citizens and government bureaucrats to do the right thing. Our challenge today is a lot harder, though, than it was in the 70s, or in the 70s or the 90s, because we have a lot of professional pessimists. I could fill a bookshelf with books about how bad the future could be. The important word is could. These people are describing the worst thing that could happen. They're not doing what the few optimists are doing, which is describing how, with these technologies, we can see even higher growth rates, even more opportunities for more people, more international trade, more fulfillment. We often do measure everything in profit and loss and salaries. These technologies will also give us the opportunity to do more with our spare time, to volunteer more, to be part of our community more. There's lots of intangible opportunities here too. Here's 3 futures that we could see. I'd recommend you look into each of these. The most interesting one is the 3rd one, which is being published in 2 days. Bruce Schneier is a leading cybersecurity expert. His new book is called Click Here to Kill Everybody. And his book discusses what can happen if we don't secure the cloud of things properly. We really have to decide whether this cloud is a broadcast network, a computer, or whether it's something so fundamental like paper and so flexible like paper that we don't need to regulate it. And I think that's the model I've always used, is this is an infrastructure that is simple, universal, and abundant. And because of that, we don't have to treat it like some scarce resource like broadcast spectrum. This is a list of all the hot button issues that I've been working on for 15 years. No surprises here. Privacy, pornography, pricing, protection, cybersecurity. These are all issues that are causing a lot of the stupid stuff that we're seeing, because people are often trying to implement the simplest solution to something, like privacy. We want to protect the privacy of our citizens in our country, so none of the data from our citizens will leave our country. That sounds like a pretty simple solution to cybersecurity. It's also idiotic, because it means that your citizens will not be able to use the global cloud services that have better security, better encryption, and are much more powerful than anything that can be done just in your country. So again, realize that emotion is not the best driver of policy. Oops. In my class on innovation, I talk about innovative nations. There's a wonderful list of myths that I've published on the 6 myths of innovation policy. You might find them useful here. I'll finish with a couple more bumper stickers, a couple tweets. First is, the internet is changing faster than ever. We will see twice as much innovation in the next 10 years as we've seen in the last 20 years, and probably twice as much in the next 10 years. Part of that change will be hidden. It'll be things like what Cloudflare does. It'll be in the infrastructure. It'll be better security and better privacy built into the system. You won't necessarily see that as a customer, but you'll enjoy the benefits. It's also important to focus on the data, not the network. To think about also the fact that we're not now talking about a few cloud data centers, we're talking about a fabric of computing. That's what we're seeing as we shift towards these local data centers that can process data as part of a global infrastructure. The most important tweet: prototype, prototype, prototype. With this technology, we can just keep trying both technology solutions and business models. And we can also prototype policy. And Bahrain is exactly the right size to do that. You're big enough to have all the talent you need and to be a market that people pay attention to. You're small enough that you can change and be nimble. The last slide, my bumper stickers. We're less than 25% of the way through the internet revolution and the cloud of things revolution. This is going to be disruptive, more disruptive than the printing press was. And the printing press caused the 30 Years' War, and the Reformation, and the establishments of nation states. Those were pretty big changes. This is going to be more and faster. And the last point is, when in doubt, empower the user and empower the citizen. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the conversation on our panel later. And you have my email. If you have questions, if you want to tell me why I'm wrong, please do that. Thank you.